In today's episode, I'm going to share with you one mistake you don't want to make when harvesting produce. Let's go. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you the mistake that I do not want to see you making when harvesting vegetables. This is a big no-no, and it's something that I've seen way too many gardeners make the mistake of, and I've also made the mistake of doing this as well, and so I've learned from my mistakes, and that's harvesting with bare hands. Now, I know a lot of people harvest their garden with their bare hands, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, there can't really be anything that wrong with harvesting with bare hands. The problem is if you do harvest with bare hands, you run the risk of damaging and even killing your plants. So what I want to do is I want to go through in this episode some of the plants you really want to be mindful of with harvesting with bare hands, and kind of some things that can happen if you do that. Now, obviously, I want you to be using tools. That's kind of the premise of this video. It's very self-explanatory. And this video, I'm going to get a lot of content to educate and inform and hopefully inspire you guys as well. But I guess the short and dirty of it is that I really want you to be using tools when you harvest. Using tools, yes, is something that you might need to buy or might need to be bringing out into the garden with you, but it can really make a huge difference in overall plant health. And like I said, just reducing, possibly killing a plant. I use one of two tools when I come into the garden. These are always my go-to tools. I just love them. For tight spaces and tiny things like herbs, I like to use my Fiskars micro-tip snips. You know that I don't enter the garden without these things, especially come harvest season. And then I also love these hand pruners here. Now these are, I don't even remember where I got these. I've had these things for years, but these have just served me so well. And I always bring them out in the garden for bigger things. Things like zucchini, which is the first one that I want to talk about, because I use these hand pruners for zucchini all the time. And it's something that I know a lot of people, they just say, well, just twist the zucchini. Well, I'll show you why you don't want to do that. Boy, I'll tell you one thing that rain does really well. Helps zucchinis grow. So as you can see here, I've got this absolutely beautiful zucchini here. And I know a lot of people just say, just take it and twist it. And yeah, absolutely. You're definitely going to be able to harvest a zucchini like that. But I would say maybe 4 out of every 10, or maybe even 5 out of every 10 times I do that, 50% of the time almost, I will either twist it and it will break the fruit, or it will actually break too far up and it can actually expose part of the stem. Now that is bad both ways, because one, if you twist this off and it actually breaks part of the fruit and the stem is left intact, like the stem that's attached to the main stem, I would say, the fruit stem and then the plant stem, I guess is what you could say. So if the fruit stem is still attached to the main stem and there's still a little bit of fruit there, that's going to attract tons of pests because you've just broken open fruit. And so no longer does it have the skin to protect it. It's just open. So you're going to have things like slugs and squash vine borers and a lot of other things that are going to be attracted to that scent that you've just opened up. Now, if you take it and you twist it and you break it from the main stem, and you actually damage the main stem, that opens up a huge wound where things like disease can get in, as well as things like squash vine borer. So you do not want to expose that. It just causes so much damage to the plant. And it's so easy just to come in here with your pruners. Just come in here. And what's easier than that? It takes almost no time at all, and you've protected the plant and protected the fruit. So this is a big one. I would say this is probably the biggest mistake I see a lot of people making, is just twisting their zucchini. Yes, you can do it, and sometimes you're going to be fine, but also I bet you if you've grown zucchini before and you've tried twisting it, you know what I mean. You can definitely cause some harm to the plant or the fruit. Now the next plant I see way too many people hand harvesting is tomatoes. Now tomatoes, yes, you can go in there and you can actually pick them off the vine, but I'll tell you what, for the amount of times that I've damaged the tomato plants, and these things take a long time to grow. I mean, they take a whole season to get nice and mature and produce a ton of fruit. The amount of times where I've just thought, well, I'll just yank it off and it'll just detach from the main stem. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And what can happen is you can actually take the main truss. Right now I've got this big mess of tomatoes, so I can't really show you what I'm talking about, but you'll understand if you've grown tomatoes. You have the main stem, and then you have the truss, which is kind of like a fruiting stem, much like a zucchini has a fruiting stem. And if you try to pull that off, it can actually kind of strip down that outer cambium layer all the way down the tomato plant because it doesn't really want to let go. It doesn't really want to detach. And that can expose the plant to tons of pests, tons of disease. It can actually end up killing the plant. And also, what you can do is you can actually snap the plant off completely. I've actually harvested tomatoes and had the plant basically come in and just basically remove half that plant, where it just basically breaks off that stem halfway, and then the top of the plant just keels over flat. It's the worst feeling ever. I cannot tell you. I mean, it only takes a split second for that to happen, and it's something that you can easily prevent by just taking microtip snips. I love these, and I actually use microtip snips to harvest my tomatoes because tomatoes sometimes are really in there, or they're all kind of nestled in there very tightly. And also, another thing is sometimes when you're hand harvesting, you can get in there too tight with your hands, and you can actually knock off unripe fruit, green tomatoes. And that's never fun either because it just took all that time and energy to grow. And so you can knock off the fresh fruit by doing that. So what I really like to do is get in there and just clip just the top of the stem just above the fruit. And so I get a little bit of that stem, I get the fruit, it falls away, I don't damage any unripe fruit, I don't damage the plant, and I get the fruit. That's what you want to do when you harvest. Now the next plant that I would really encourage you to use pruners for are leafy greens. I just cannot tell you how often I've come in here thinking I'm just going to pull off a few leaves for a salad, and then what happens, I end up pulling the entire plant up. The problem is the leafy greens don't actually have a very deep root system. They're fairly shallowly rooted. And so what you can do is, just unintentionally, you can come in here, pull off some, and you just basically tug on them thinking they're going to break away. But if you've had a fresh rain, or if the plants are not really well established yet, you can pull up the entire plant. And then what happens? Well, the sun comes out, it gets hot, they wither and die, and they pretty much just die from stress because you've damaged all those roots. They don't have the energy to regrow new ones, and so pretty much you can spell death for your plant by doing that. So what I like to do is I like to just grab my microtip snips or pruners, doesn't really matter. I come in here and I make a nice clean cut. And that way I can harvest my greens. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer. You can also do this with a knife as well. I mean, I've cut greens with a knife. I cut lettuce with a knife all the time. Cut and come again style lettuce. I'll come in there, I'll grab the top of the lettuce and I'll just make a nice clean cut. But notice I'm not ripping up, I'm not pulling anything, and that can really save your plants from being completely uprooted and end up hurting them. So that's another one. That's number 3. All right, now the 4th plant I really want to caution you guys on harvesting with your bare hands are beans. Now you might be asking yourself, what's he pointing to? Well, these are bean plants. It's just, we have a pretty hefty rabbit population this year. And so we're gonna be constructing some chicken wire fencing around these bean plants, at least until they get large enough to where they can kind of fend for themselves. But they've kind of been mowed off at the tops, and they'll come back, they'll be fine. But needless to say, these are bean plants. And I can't tell you how many times I've simply gone through, I've said, well, I'm just going to harvest a big bunch of beans. I go to pull up, I think it's gonna snap free. And much like the, any plant that's very fragile, very temperamental, you can break it, but also much like the Swiss chard, I can sometimes completely uproot it. And so that's because they don't have very deep root systems and the stems are very fragile. So you combine the two, you're really looking for a recipe for disaster when you try to harvest beans from hand. So what I like to do is I like to come in here, use my microtip snips, just come in there, clip off the beans, and that way I'm really going to ensure that I'm not causing any damage to the beans. It's just, like I said, it's such an easy step. It takes almost no time at all. And I know that harvesting, especially when it's hot out, especially when you have tons to harvest, I mean, it sounds kind of like a first world problem. I have so much to harvest, it's such a chore. But I know that sometimes, beans, they do produce a lot, and it can feel a little bit like a chore, and you just want to do it really quickly and get it done. But that haste can sometimes come back to bite you, and it's definitely come back to bite me numerous times. So I just want to caution you guys on harvesting beans with your bare hands. It's definitely one that you really want to take some caution with. So let's move on to number 5. All right, and the 5th and final vegetable that I really want to caution you guys when harvesting with your bare hands are peppers. Now, peppers are the most notorious plant to have damage done to them because their stems are very, very fragile. I can't tell you how many times I've come in here trying to just grab a pepper, and what ends up happening is I snap off, the top half of the plant. I know a lot of you have encountered this, and it's actually what prompted this video. The other ones were ones that I have experienced, but I actually received an email asking if they could root the top of the plant because they accidentally broke it off when they were harvesting peppers. And I felt so bad that I hadn't done this video prior, because I feel a little bit obligated to bring this information out to you guys to prevent these mistakes from happening. And I definitely have cautioned you all on harvesting peppers because of their very fragile nature, but I've never really done a video highlighting it. And so for that, I apologize, but also, for that, that's kind of what inspired this video. So yeah, you really want to be careful when harvesting peppers. You want to come in here, and I've got some beautiful banana peppers here. So what you want to do is you want to bring them in here and just clip them off at the fruiting stem. It's just so easy to do, takes almost no time at all. And again, it's that haste that can come back to bite you, because if you come in here and try to pull them off, what's going to happen is you're going to break some of these stems, almost guaranteed. I've done it so many times, I can't even tell you. And so now it's just a hard lesson learned. Just use some clippers, it's going to be way better. So there you go. There are 5 plants that you want to be very careful of with hand harvesting. And the one mistake that I don't want you to make is to not be using pruners when you harvest. It's just such an easy thing to do, and I really would recommend trying it. If you've not yet already, go pick yourself up some micro-tip snips or little hand pruners. There's a very inexpensive garden tool that's going to serve you well and really help to take your gardening game to the next level. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there, subscribe if you've not yet already, and make sure to share this video with a friend if you think they'd enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, we'll catch you all on the next episode. Grow big or go home, everyone. Bye.